Good morning, leaders, and welcome back to the classroom here at Manhood University in the middle of our leadership series. Hey, last week we got a perspective on our relevance, and this week I want to follow that up with something that is just as, if not more important. Have you ever watched a basketball game where just having that star player performing at his best seems to energize the entire team and pull them out of a deficit? Or you know that one person who shows up and makes a party come alive? And then there's that person who, even though we've been stuck with a personality who's sucking the oxygen out of the room, that one leader who shows up and just by walking in the room deflates those toxic personalities and boosts morale for everyone. Leaders, our presence is essential. It literally can make the difference between success and failure. So this is where we have to evoke the healthy part of our egos to understand that something about us sets us apart. And while that does not necessarily come with special privileges, it does come with certain responsibilities. So they say half of winning is showing up, and I wholeheartedly agree. It's not often a team who has suffered defeat after defeat will look around and say, "Where's our leader?" I have worked with teams where we'll struggle through a project or an event and we'll all be thinking to ourselves and eventually say out loud, "Boy, it sure would have been nice to have the boss around." Our presence, leaders, is vital. And there are 4 ways I like to show you that can make huge strides with not just your people, but also with your leaders and with peers that you may be at odds with, whether in terms of philosophy or just plain old rivalry. And the first way to make your presence known is to take your seat at the table. I can't tell you how many times I have watched a leader be invited to sit at the table, only to say, "That's not me. The really important people sit there," and then move into the back of the meeting room. First off, some of you need to just drop the false humility routine. Secondly, let's take you out of this scenario and think about the message you're sending to your team. When people see you at the table, there's a sign that you belong there. It's not an ego trip, but you don't know exactly how other leaders are perceived in your organization. And you certainly can't control the perceptions of your leadership compared to that of others. To avoid having those in your area of responsibility feeling left out, your people need to see you at the table, not off in the gallery. Also, your leaders need to know that you're confident enough to take your seat. If your department is viewed with little respect, won't you just be validating their perceptions? And in leadership, perceptions can quickly become reality. As a leader, your prominence translates to that of your people, your team, your staff, your department. Let me draw you this picture. If the CEOs of the major automakers were testifying before Congress on the future of the automobile industry and the CEO of General Motors was absent, what message would that send? Now, don't give me all the what ifs or you never know. The immediate message to the viewer is that anyone who isn't at that hearing is not an industry leader, at least not in the eyes of Congress. Now, another way you need to make your presence known is to take your seat in front of the room. In my organization, there are certain seats that are reserved for senior leaders when we have an assembly, and we encourage other leaders to sit up front as well. But it's funny to see how many leaders will attempt to be the man of the people by choosing a seat at or near the back of the room. But just like that seat at the conference room table, you should want your people to see you out front. This goes double for those who are really uncomfortable up front. Now, while you sit there thinking to yourself that all these dudes with big heads and overinflated impressions of themselves are clamoring for those seats up front, if you're a leader with humility, I would argue that you need to have a presence to show your people that the stuffed shirts aren't the only ones that the organization respects. The presence of a leader who is known to be of good character, hanging out right there amongst the pompous and the self-important, makes for a great visual when you're trying to communicate what can't be said, but can only be observed. Now, on to our next point, that third way to make your presence known, and that's coming through the front door. So there was a building that I worked in for some time, and it had side entrances, back doors, and a maze of connecting hallways and corridors. I didn't know about any of those entrances until about a year working there when a coworker showed them to me. At first, I thought it was great, way to get in without being seen so I could work on projects without anybody tasking me with extras. But then I got promoted and I started working in leadership within another organization. And the tendency was to come in through the side entrance of this new building to get to work. But I'm a leader now. Through the front entrance were the administrative offices, other people coming to work within the organization, other leaders who were now my peers coming to work. The opportunity to greet people gets passed up when you come through the side door. Coming through the front is less about your elevated sense of self-worth and more about showing your leaders and peers alike that you understand the gravity of the office you hold. Okay, let me teach on that for just a minute. The leadership position that you have, it existed well before you. It will exist long after you. While you can certainly bring nuance to it, don't let a keeping it real or just one of the guys attitude cause you to miss the importance of the work that you're doing and keep you from honoring those who promoted you and serving those you're blessed to lead. Dignity, not arrogance. That's what's required to understand the value of your presence. Walk through the front door. Now listen, this fourth mode of presence will make some of you scratch your heads, but bear with me, there is a method to my madness. So I've known many a leader coming from a real place of humility who wants to give up the parking spot. Told you it was going to be a head scratcher. Listen, I don't need a parking spot to feel important. I get that, and that's what people say, and you're absolutely right. You don't need a parking spot, but your presence is important, right? So whether you're still in the process of making changes within your department or if you're adapting the organization to new ways of doing things, you will learn fast that people will wait for you to leave to act a fool. Listen, all those who are taking charge and taking you seriously, right, will do what you're supposed to do. But then there's those who don't take you seriously, and they want to make sure that as soon as you're out of earshot, they can run things their way. So you've got your car parked right there in the spot. You know what that tells everybody? That leader, that man with gravitas and presence is somewhere around. So if I want to do something stupid, right, I should probably wait for him to leave. It's just that simple. And you can't be everywhere at once. You have duties and responsibilities. Park your car in that spot. And I guarantee you, if you've had a firm hand in making sure that the organizational tone has been set properly, then when people look out that window of their office and they see that your car is still in the spot, whatever it was you set in motion, they're going to think twice about standing up against and trying to do things their own way. So listen, fellas, that was short and sweet. Why? Because you need to turn this off, go into your organizations, have your presence known, and lead. I appreciate y'all hanging out with me this week. We'll have more to come next time on Manhood University. Until then, God bless you, leaders.